Again, I want you to remember the Third Reich. I want you to remember FDR insisting on international norms. Is that what China is going to care about? Is that what Iran cares about? I'm telling you, we're in trouble in so many ways, but we're in trouble. And China knows how to manipulate this guy. Remember, they wanted this guy to be elected, and there won't be a single investigation. But they wanted Biden, and they're thrilled. Just like the Palestinians wanted Biden, they're thrilled. Just like the Cubans wanted Biden, they're thrilled. For all the talk about Trump coddling up the dictators, Trump did not coddle up the dictators. He dealt with them, and he tried to deal with them on a personal level. Biden is an appeaser. He's a Neville Chamberlain. And unfortunately, history repeats itself. And I want you to listen. I'm putting my marker down right now. It's not about me. I want you to listen. I'm putting my marker down right now. This is a turning point, and not a good one. We're in deep jello. We really are. All right, I want to move on to a couple other subjects. Something very interesting happening. I think the most important case right now in terms of the litigation in Pennsylvania is the case that was not brought by the Trump campaign. It's a case that was brought by Congressman Mike Kelly, by candidate Sean Parnell, and 6 other brave souls. I think we're very lucky, I hope we are, to have Associate Justice Alito as the lead justice in the states that include Pennsylvania. Because if you had some of these other justices, Roberts, certainly any of the leftists, there would be no hope whatsoever. I'm hoping there is hope here. And what took place in Pennsylvania was an outrage. And the question is whether states can break their own laws, courts can violate their own rules, and whether together they can violate the federal United States Constitution in order to influence the outcome of a presidential election, because they know that the Supreme Court's going to sit on its butt, collective butt, because they know the Supreme Court won't intercede. But I get the sense that Justice Alito's onto this. I get the sense that he's really looking at this. I hope I'm right. I don't know. But he's taken steps that suggest it. And what you'll hear by Ed Morrissey, a very bright guy, over at Hot Air and others, is, now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We're in this safe harbor period. It's December 9th. If they don't issue a decision by December 9th, it's pointless. It's useless. Now, of course, that's absurd. Even though the states, most of them will certify by then. Nobody knows what Sam Alito or the Supreme Court will do, but everybody knows how this works, I hope. That in the end, it's Congress that selects the President of the United States by counting the electors from the different states. That's the Electoral College process. In our history, not often, but from time to time, Congress has not accepted electors from certain states, or they've been challenged from certain states. That's what I think's going on here. That doesn't mean Donald Trump's going to become president of the United States. It means this is a very serious and substantive constitutional issue. It has nothing to do with the safe harbor. Nothing. Nor is the Supreme Court bound by the safe harbor either. So our friend Professor William Jacobson over at Legal Insurrection, he's taken another look at this, second look. He says, Pennsylvania, don't assume Alito giving up until 12/9 to respond to emergency application means he's letting it die on the vine. On December 1, 2020, he says, we covered an emergency application for injunctive relief, sought to halt any further actions by Pennsylvania to certify the election. Another emergency application, substantially similar, was filed yesterday, December 3rd. That made no sense to me. Why would they file twice? Well, I knew why they filed twice, because they wanted to dot their I's and cross their T's, and they went back to the state Supreme Court for basically reconsideration as a procedural matter, and within seconds, it seems, the state Supreme Court denied it. In other words, they sought a stay so they could appeal to the Supreme Court, and that court denied it. That's how corrupt, intellectually and politically, that court is. So the court did as expected, the state Supreme Court, and denied it. And so they appealed today to the U.S. Supreme Court. And as I say, Alito covers this area of the states. It's called the Third Circuit, but it includes Pennsylvania. And Professor Jacobson writes, there's a lot of chatter that's such a long period of time because he's given the respondents, really the Attorney General of Pennsylvania is another left-wing kook, he's given them several days to reply. Wednesday, December 9, 4 p.m., everybody's saying, well, that's it, because the safe harbor's on the 9th, so that means the Supreme Court can't do anything. Now, stop a second. Ask yourselves a question. Is it possible that Sam Alito and the court will do nothing after all this? It's possible, but why would they go through this, Mr. Producer, to get to a nothing burger? They can ignore it altogether. So your brain has to kick into gear, and you have to say, okay, what might be up? We don't know exactly, but what might be up?
Okay, so I'm going to pause what Mark is saying at this point, and I just want to add my thoughts. What might be up? Why is it taking Alito so long to respond to the Supreme Court request on the Pennsylvania case? Well, another possibility is the Supreme Court wants to wait for a couple more states' cases to also hit the desk. Why just rule on one case when you can see multiple cases are working their way through the lower court system and all the hurdles, and they're eventually going to get up to the Supreme Court as well? Why not just deal with them all together? Mark doesn't bring this up, but that's a distinct possibility as well. Sit back and wait and see if 3 or 4 of these states have enough evidence to consider them all, and then drop the hammer and make sure that these 4 states are all straightened out in one lump sum. That's another possibility. But like Mark says, we can't read the minds of the court. We don't really know what's going on. It could be that. It could be they're just going to let it die on the vine. So let's go back to what Mark was saying and some of his angles on this.
Professor Jacobson says there's a lot of chatter that such a long period of time under the circumstances must be a way for Alito to let the application die on the vine, that the application would be moot, or otherwise pushing it off to make meaningful relief impossible. So certainly we can't read Alito's mind, but if there's anyone on the Supreme Court I don't worry about playing such games, it's Alito and Thomas. He says too early to tell for Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, or Barrett. I agree. So Jacobson looks at this. He says, well, let me take a crack at this. He says, in my mind-reading exercise, Alito giving the respondents enough time to fully prepare opposition likely means he and some other justices take the matter seriously and plan to rule on the merits once the opposition is submitted, rather than limiting their ruling to emergency injunctive relief. Now, he could be right, he could be wrong, but we're reading tea leaves. They could treat the emergency application as a petition for certiorari, accept it, and rule substantively. The few days gives the justice enough time to prepare their respective opinions. It's not like they really need briefs from the respondents to know the counter-arguments. That's right, we all know what the counter-arguments are. What the ultimate merits ruling would be remains to be seen. In my prior post, he says I was very pessimistic that the Supreme Court would take the case or rule in a way that would change the state result. That's not to say that what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did was right. It wasn't. And that court has acted more like a litigant throughout this process. Mark Levin's Landmark Legal Foundation has filed an amicus laying out the defects with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling. Now, I would love to take the credit. I'm the chairman of Landmark Legal, but our president did that, Pete Hutchison. But yes, Landmark has filed a brief in that case. Says the issue I keep coming back to is, what is the remedy? The Supreme Court could rule that the non-absentee mail-in votes were unlawful and order the Pennsylvania certify the vote and appoint electors based on the lawful vote only. He says that seems to the only remedy that works under the timeline for selecting the Electoral College. Kicking the matter over to the Pennsylvania legislature to select electors could be an alternative, though less timely, but again, it would require disqualifying mail-in vote as unlawful. Would the Supreme Court take such a step? It would mean that millions of voters who honestly thought they were lawfully voting would not have their votes counted. Don't think for a second that the justices don't understand the political implications or are not sensitive to them. Says we'll find out. No, I think what they're going to do, well, they can do a number of things. If I were a justice, let me put it to you this way. I would rule on the merits of the case. I clearly find what Pennsylvania did is unconstitutional, unless now we're going to open Pandora's box and all these states are going to run wild, violate their own constitutions, put all kinds of weird conditions in, and there'll be no end to this, and there'll be no left of the integrity of the election. But everybody knows that when Pennsylvania changed their voting rules in October 2019, it was directed at the Electoral College. And everybody knows that what the Secretary of State and the governor did by fiat, and what the Supreme Court there, controlled by radical Democrats, did by fiat, violated Article 2 of the Constitution, but even more, it violated the Pennsylvania state constitution. Well, where's the federal question? The federal question?
Okay, I want to pause there and interject my thoughts at this point once again. Mark's talking about what the remedies might be if it reaches the Supreme Court and the political ramifications. And he says, what would I do if I were the judge? Well, if I were the judge, I would hand down a ruling that recognizes that, in fact, what these states did in many cases was unconstitutional, all right, and they carried out some pockets of illegal voting. Most of these pockets of illegal voting were in locations within the states that are heavily Democrat, and they had Democrats running the election process in certain districts or certain counties. So the remedy has to be to throw out some of the votes in these areas where it can be shown quite obviously that the illegal voting went on. You can either throw out the counties where the illegal voting went on and recount everything minus those counties or minus those districts, or you can say, well, obviously the state officials violated the law, therefore the entire state's slate of electors, which can be 10 electors, 16 electors, whatever, that entire slate of electors has to be removed. Now, you can kick it back to the legislature for that state to make that final decision, but you can hand down the ruling giving that guidance. That's what I would do as a judge. I would rule, in my opinion, that it was unconstitutional, that laws were broken. If you can't nail down specific slates of voters to remove, then you remove the entire slate of electors. Either way, there's a good chance that the electors will be removed from Biden's count, or the slate of electors will be given over to Trump, added to his count. But if you add them to Trump's count, you've removed them from Biden's count at the same time. They need 3 states out of 6 states that have been corrupted and are being challenged. So the Supreme Court should wait for all 3 states, at least 3 states, to reach the bench. Then they should examine the evidence for all those states that reach the bench and hand down the ruling accordingly. At least that's what I would do if I were the judge. Now let's continue on with what Mark is saying here.
This is all about us selecting electors for the president and vice president of the United States, in some ways much like the Bush versus Gore decision. It's not a federalism issue. It's not a federalism issue at all. Otherwise, what's the point of Article 2? So I would rule on the merits. I rule that, in fact, Act 77 was intended and did, in fact, contravene the state constitution, and in doing so, really all elements of the state legislature, the executive branch, and the court, even though they're at odds with each other, effectively what they did was violate the manner in which electors are to be chosen. In other words, these electors leave their state presence, and I don't mean personally, I mean the votes, and they become relevant at the federal level. They become relevant in every way. The Electoral College is the means by which we choose a president and a vice president. If there was ever a federal question, this is the federal question. Plenary power is broad, but it's not so broad as to be illegal. It's not so broad as to poison the pool of electors. That can't be the case. Nobody believes that when the framers came up with this, and particularly when the ratifiers and the conventions ratified it, that they ever dreamed of, plenary power means we can violate our own constitutions. Of course not. There's an interesting letter that was sent by 76 members of the state legislature in Pennsylvania to members of Congress.
Okay, now at this point, before we go on with the rest of this conversation, keep one thing in mind. If the electors are removed entirely from a given state, and again, they need at least 3 states that have double-digit electors, 10 or more. If they come up with 30 or more electors, there's a good chance that Biden's elector count drops below the 270 mark. But the point is, if their electors are simply removed, not even given to Trump, just removed completely, and we end up with both candidates, Biden and Trump, having less than the 270 electors, then you end up with a situation where Congress itself, the House of Representatives, end up having to pick the president, and the Senate ends up having to pick the vice president. So the ruling from the Supreme Court has to be specific. You either remove the electors or you remove the votes that were illegal, or both. And then you let things pan out however they pan out once the states that had the illegal voting, once those states are corrected by either totally removing the illegitimate state or by removing the illegitimate votes. So let's go ahead with that thought in mind and hear what happens from here on as far as Mark's thoughts are concerned.
So I posted the video of what took place with these suitcases and the ballots, and now the state says, no, these aren't suitcases. These are These are containers we normally use, and everything was fine. And so Facebook attacked me again. What happened, Rich?
Facebook said you are a fake news, that poll watchers were not told to leave in Georgia, and the suitcases were not pulled from under the table, and they restricted your Facebook page.
So they restricted my Facebook page, meaning they don't send out any information to all of you following me on Facebook of anything I'm posting. You just have to go to Facebook yourself.
Correct.
And this is what Facebook has been doing, right, Rich?
Yep, they've been hitting you almost every day, every other day.
We're hit every day, every other day. There's always some kind of statement that's made. We're being targeted. For Mediaite and all the other clowns out there is following. Oh, he's not leaving. I've said we're leaving Facebook on December 31. Why am I not leaving Twitter? Because Twitter hasn't done anything to me. If that time comes, we will leave. So what the media are doing now is now they're trashing Parler, because they know that's where people who truly believe in free speech are headed. But Facebook doesn't treat Nazis from Iran this way. It doesn't treat communists in China this way. So we're going to leave. I can't wait till we drop Facebook, Mr. Producer. Now, why are we hanging around Facebook? We only have like 1.65 million on Facebook, right? I think Facebook has kept our numbers down on Facebook for years, haven't they, Rich? Really outrageous. It's such a corrupt company. Zuckerberg is so corrupt the way he tried to influence the election. There really needs to be a thorough investigation of that bastard. These guys are the new robber barons. At least the old robber barons produce something, like food, energy, automobiles. What do these guys produce? Propaganda, censorship. They lied their way into their billions. They use your data without your permission. They know all about your personal lives. Who are these disgusting pukes? And then they backhandedly, Christian Adams had a good piece at PJ Media the other day, and how this guy Zuckerberg influenced the votes in these various precincts in the inner city and so forth. He's disgusting. Nancy Pelosi at a press conference today. Cut 7, go.
Well, months ago, when you said, I'm not going to accept half a loaf.
I'm going to tell you something. Don't characterize what we did before as a mistake, as a preface to your question, if you want an answer. That was not a mistake. It was a decision, and it has taken us to a place where we can do the right thing without other...
What is she talking about? What is Eva Pelosi talking about? First of all, that's Manu Raju at CNN. She slapped his little ass down. They don't mind that when she does it. They don't mind it when she does. He doesn't talk back to her, does he? No. You know what she's saying there? These relief packages? She purposely waited. She wanted to wait. She was hoping to get a new president. She said that was not a mistake. It was a decision. These are cold-hearted people, ladies and gentlemen. They want you to think they care about you. They don't give a crap about you. I'll be right back. I say we take some calls here from some patriots. Let's go to... Whoa, he just dropped out. Let's go to Dave, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the great WPHT. Go, Dave.
Good evening, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
You got it.
I am a simple man. I'm a simple man, Mark. I'm a trucker, over-the-road truck driver. I listen to you on XM all the time.
Thank you.
And I am absolutely furious. I mean, it's beyond furious. It's more like just a cold burn at these Pennsylvania legislatures. They wanted this job. They campaigned for it. They went out and knocked on doors and shook hands and ate chicken dinners and the pancake breakfasts and talked at the town fairs and whatever else. They ran for election. They raised money for it. They won, and they got all the perks. You know, they have the title of whatever office they hold, but now it's time to do the work.
Let me tell you something. You've got some real patriots there, about 70 or 80 of them out of, give or take, about 150, 160. But the Republican leadership is extremely weak. You've got some second, third tier guys that are very strong, but the Republican leadership in the Senate and in the Assembly, the Pennsylvania, they're very, very weak.
and I did not know anything about that letter until you read it, or it would have probably tempered my remarks a little bit. But it really burns me, Mark, that these guys, and they wanted this work. They put their hand on a Bible and swore to uphold and defend the Constitution. So help them God. All right, God, time to help them, because they need it. They're not doing the work. That's all I want them to do, Mark, is just do their damn job. They wanted it. Now do it.
Now we're going to have to look to Congress to see if they'll do their damn job, because Congress counts these electors, and the electors have been spoiled, as we say. Just like ballots are spoiled, what Pennsylvania did. And what's needed here is for the Supreme Court to play a role as traffic cops, as referees, to oversee this process and make sure it never happens again. And if they take a pass on this, I mean, it's going to be a disaster.
And they should be ashamed of themselves that they need babysitters.
Mm-hmm.
These people are supposedly serious about their work. They want all the TV spots. They want the radio spots.
Are you a Pennsylvanian?
Yes, sir. Born and raised.
Well, let me tell you something. The way your Constitution, that's where I was born, obviously. The way your Constitution is supposed to work is you, the people of Pennsylvania, vote on whether to amend the Constitution or not. Did you get a chance to vote on this amendment?
No, sir.
No, you didn't. Because they stuck it in an omnibus bill in October 2019. The Republicans did. The Democrat governor couldn't wait to sign it. So they bypassed you. They like to talk about disenfranchisement, but when it comes to disenfranchisement in the way that violates the Constitution of your state, they don't even give it a second thought.
They don't give me a second thought.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm not looking at them as my end-all, be-all leaders. These are the people that we voted for to say, okay, you can represent us. I still have my voice. I still want to be consulted. If they're going to change something that's going to dramatically affect how my vote is counted or cast in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I'd like to have a say in it.
And you have 5 oligarchs sitting on that Supreme Court. There's 7 of them, and these 5 are the worst of the worst. They could give a damn what the federal or state constitutions have to say. Let's go to Bob, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, XM Satellite. Bob, go.
Hey, Mark, nice to talk to you. So I had a couple thoughts. Without going into great detail, I think that we can all take it as a given that there was some funny business this election. And I have strong reason to believe, based on people I know who were doing investigations in 2018, that we probably shouldn't have lost the House in 2018 either. There was funny business then, and that was a dress rehearsal. I think you made a compelling argument some time back that the state legislatures control the election. Mm-hmm. And what I want to know is...
Well, they have to operate within the law, but yes, they control the outcome.
They do, yeah. But it seems to me that the only reason that we're in this situation is because our Republican representatives that we've sent to our state houses and to Congress time and time again on these false promises, they just simply don't choose to win. All they have to do is decide, we want to win for a change. And
you make a great point. The Democrats play dirty, and the Republicans don't play at all. It's really that simple.
Right, exactly. At least I can respect the Democrats because they want to win, even if their ideas are
You've
terrible.
got Republicans now who are saying, come on, get over it. Wait to the next election. So now all this stuff that's going on, that's now the new baseline. And so you're going to surrender our country and our vote because you want to get this over with? You don't get things over with. You confront them.
I think we need 100,000 actual peaceful protesters in front of every state house in the country until our Republicans decide to do their job. And any Republican who doesn't want to do their job...
Look. The problem is 74 million people turned out and they cast their ballots earnestly and honestly.
Okay, one more quick comment. You've got a couple guys here that have called in and they're both pissed off. They both want to see something fixed. And this guy, he says, let's get some people out there and rally and put some pressure on these damn rhinos. And then Mark lets me down and he says, oh, no, let's don't do that. Well, bullshit. We've got people that want to clean house. I don't care if you want to clean house on the Democrat side or the Republican side. They want to clean house. Mark needs to suck it up a little bit. Instead of just talking the talk, he needs to start walking the walk. He puts out good information when it comes to legal analysis, but when it comes to picking up your guns and maybe marching on over to the State House or on over to the Capitol building in D.C. and surrounding it and telling these motherfucking assholes that are screwing up our country that if they don't wise up and do the right thing, we're going to fucking blow your head off. Nope, Mark, he chickens out when it gets to that point. But people are starting to call into these talk shows, and they're starting to say what they think. They're trying to do it in a politically correct way, but you know what they're thinking in the back of their mind. And Mark doesn't want to, lose his job and lose his broadcast. So he's trying to tamp that down. He's trying to, cover his butt a little bit. And if these people in the media, in the conservative media, and if these conservative rhinos would just grow a pair, it wouldn't take more than a couple of weeks to clean up this entire mess and move on with a country that was what the founders thought we should have. Anyway, that's just my O2. That's my 2 cents on that one.
Trump got 11 million more votes the second time. We turned out. And I'm just going to say this flat out, and I've said it before. There is no way Joe Biden got 80 million legitimate votes. There's simply no way. Just no way.
I know privately told me they voted for Trump. They just don't want to tell anybody because they don't want their houses burnt down.
Okay, but that's part of the 11 million. And what Trump did was unbelievable. And he had coattails and so forth, but he couldn't win, and none of it makes a lot of sense. Thank you for your call, my friend. Tony, Queens, New York, the great WABC. Go.
Mark, I've listened to you for years. I think you're fantastic. I want to make one point. If people look at the numbers in the 6 states, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, etc., if you look at those states and the supposed vote counts, you will see that on average, it varies somewhat by state, but on average, it only takes 6 votes in every 1,000 votes to reverse who the winner is.
Interesting.
And that doesn't get enough attention. They talk about systemic fraud, no evidence. There does not need to be systemic fraud. It is a tiny proportion of the vote counts.
That is a brilliant point. In other words, it doesn't have to be some systemic scheme. He just needed a few votes in this precinct, a few votes in this precinct. You're exactly right, Tony. If I had free government cheese, I'd be giving you some right now.
What prompted me to call you was when you're talking about how gutless so many Republicans are, and I think if they knew how little numerically how little the amount of fraud needs to be numerically.
How little it would take to swing a state. No, you're exactly right. All right, Tony, appreciate your call, my friend.
And this guy brings up another good point. The popular vote. The problem with this concept of just everybody voting and picking the president, instead of using the checks and balances approach of the electoral college that we have, which, by the way, the electors are picked on November 3rd, and then you've got the rest of November and December and most of January to double check that the popular vote and the votes at the local level are all legitimate. That approach of taking time between the election to seat the ones that won the election, that approach has checks and balances. But these people think, no, we need to just have plain old democratic mob rule voting, which can easily be manipulated, and that's the way a country should be run. That's the way a vice president and a president should be elected. These Democrats are Marxist, libtard, demon craps. Anybody that thinks that democracy is a good way to run a country is an asshole. And our founders knew that. They knew how easily democracies can be corrupted. They came up with the Electoral College. They came up with a couple of months between voting and seating the person. And they've put in constitutional checks and balances. But the MLDs, the Marxist libtard Democrats, try to corrupt the system. This time they've gone out of their way to corrupt multiple states, not just a little area in Florida like they did in 2000. Nope, they're doing a full court press. We're going to corrupt 5 or 6 states this time. By God, if we corrupt a whole bunch of states this time in just the key cities, wow. There isn't any way that during even a 2-month period, the litigation can overturn our rigged election. Anyway, take that as it may be, but that's, again, my 2 cents on that one.
Let's see here. Let's go to Woody, Lake Havasu, Arizona, XM Satellite. Woody, go right ahead.
We've had 3 holidays, Memorial Day, July 4th, and then Labor Day. We've had California and Arizona up and down the river flying Trump flags all the way. Sunday before Election Day, I came from Orange County, California, back to Havasu, miles and miles and miles of Trump renegades, up and down flags. Not a one Biden flag have I seen. How is this possible?
Let me tell you something. 80 million votes for Joe Biden. It's very interesting. You make an interesting point, which is this. You saw no energy for Biden at all. I think that's your point. And the energy all went one way, but you saw no great outpouring, no great juggernaut for Joe Biden. It simply did not exist. It simply did not exist. All right, my friend, thank you for your call. Let us continue, shall we? Jimmy, Brooklyn, New York, the great WABC. Go.
You're doing great work, Mark. You know, in Marxist history and Marxist strategy, they call for a general strike to close down all the businesses and factories and get the angry masses into the streets. We had a general strike imposed on us by Communist China, and then the radicals in the Democrat Party used that general strike imposed on us to get the masses in the street angry, violent, burning down cities, and tears our economy down. And with the radical left controlling the media, we haven't had a real, truly free and fair election in half a century, because with the radical left controlling or influencing the media and the schools, they put ideas in people's heads, so they go out and vote freely.
Well, I have to slightly disagree. It's gotten much, much worse. Much, much worse. What went on this election has never gone on in American history.
That's right. This is a coup.
This election, and China's sitting there smiling because if you heard me earlier in the program, I said we're beyond the precipice now. We're moving towards the other side of the mountain. That is, China's on the ascendancy and we're in a decline. It's just that simple. And it's not because of 74 million of us or patriots or our military or law enforcement. No. It's because of the Democrat Party, the left-wing ideologues, the utter corruption in our institutions, where the progressives have devoured them. That is, the neo-Nazis have devoured them. I began the show showing you article after article, and not in the main media, of course, of the mindset and the statements of this would-be Biden presidency. These people are going to roll over backwards and do jumping jacks, whatever this guy Xi wants. They're in his back pocket, either ideologically or otherwise. It's a huge problem.
You know, Mark, we have to, at the rallies and protests, we have to start burning the communist flag. People have to see what this battle is. They burn the American flag. We should burn the communist flag at all the rallies. That might wake up some people to just what the battle is.
I'm not sure what we need to do, but I'm really noodling over this. I don't think these constant protests are getting us too far. I think we need to demand there are 31 Republican state legislatures. Does it seem like there's 31 Republican state legislatures to you, Jimmy? What are they doing?
And
gentlemen, hang in there, stick together. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel.